From Keene in the Shire, the Liberty Media capital of the world, this is Daryl W. Perry, host of FPP Radio News for Monday, July 23rd, 2018. Silver is trading at $15.50 per ounce. Gold is valued at $1,230 per ounce. Zencash is trading at $26, and the average price of Bitcoin is $7,675. Antiwar.com reports a suicide bomber detonated himself in a crowd of people in the Kabul International Airport in the Afghan capital city on Sunday, killing at least 14 people and wounding 60 others. Officials say the slain were both civilians and security forces. While such a large attack would always be noteworthy, the timing makes it particularly so. The attack took place during the return of Afghan Vice President Abdul Rashid Dostum. A large number of high-ranking officials were present at the time of the attack, though none appear to have been among the casualties. The bomber seems to have hit further back in the crowd where security was managing civilians. Dostum has been in exile recently after he was accused of ordering the kidnapping and rape of a former governor seen as a political rival. Dostum retains substantial political support in the Faryab province, and his return came amid large protests demanding he be allowed back in the country. While Dostum and the other officials were unharmed, it was clearly a jarring incident for many, as top officials aren't often present to witness suicide bombings or the aftermath. The Islamic State issued a statement taking credit for the attack, which is unsurprising. The Islamic State has been responsible for many of the large attacks in Kabul recently. High casualty attacks inside Kabul have been a problem for years, and the recent flurry of incidents are a particular embarrassment for the Afghan government, underscoring how badly they are failing to provide security even within their own capital city. Zencash is the world's first private, distributed, and reliable platform for communications, transactions, and publishing. Zencash has the ability to use both transparent and shielded transactions, with shielded transactions using zero-knowledge proofs. Zencash features global governance with inclusive decision-making, reliable funding for continuous improvements, and documentation and wallets in many languages that are available for Linux, Mac, Windows, and Android devices. Learn more at zencash.com. That's zencash.com. UPI reports pharmacy chain CVS has apologized after a pharmacist at one of its Arizona locations refused to fill a hormone therapy prescription for a transgender woman. The company released a statement one day after Hilda Hall wrote a blog post about her experience on the American Civil Liberties Union website. In the post on the ACLU website, Hill said she went to the Fountain Hills, Arizona CVS in April to get her first prescription for hormone therapy, but the pharmacist, who has not been identified publicly, refused to fill the prescription, did not give a reason why, and instead questioned who and why Hill was given the prescription. After Hill's doctor called the CVS to explain the prescription, the pharmacist still refused, according to Hill. She was eventually able to get her prescription filled at a local Walgreens. Hill filed a complaint against CVS with the Arizona State Board of Pharmacy and asked for a public apology. In that apology, CVS acknowledged that Hill attempted to contact the company about the incident but was ignored. The company blamed that on an unintentional oversight. Are you an advocate for free market money? Do you promote Bitcoin as an alternative in a fiat-centric world? Then you need Spendabit in your arsenal, the search engine for things you can buy with Bitcoin. Spendabit aggregates millions of products from thousands of Bitcoin-enabled merchants. Keep your money in the free economy. Visit spendabit.co today. Bitcoin merchants, ask about our merchant suite to reach even more customers. Spendabit.co. Reuters reports the duck boat that sank in a Missouri lake last week, killing 17 people, was set to be raised on Monday and taken to a secure facility as part of a federal investigation into one of the deadliest U.S. tourist accidents in years. The U.S. Coast Guard said on Sunday it will oversee the salvage operation of the amphibious vehicle that was carrying 31 people when it went down on Thursday in a fierce and sudden storm on Table Rock Lake outside of the tourist destination of Branson, Missouri. 7 of the 14 survivors were taken to a local hospital, and all but one had been discharged as of Sunday evening. 2 of the World War II-style amphibious duckboat vehicles were out on the lake and headed back to shore when the storm struck, but only one made it. The deceased were aged between 1 and 70 and came from 6 U.S. states. Readings near Branson when the boat went down showed winds up to 73 miles per hour, just 2 miles shy of hurricane force. The boat's captain, who was among the survivors, reportedly pointed out the life jackets but told those aboard they were not needed. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates at shop.fppradio.com helps fund FPP Radio. That's shop.fppradio.com. This has been FPP Radio News. Online at fppradio.com.
There are a ton of social networking websites, but one stands apart for a very special reason. This one saves lives. It's MatchingDonors.com. MatchingDonors.com links organ donors with people in need of kidney and other transplants. In the U.S., 19 people die each day waiting for an organ transplant, most of them for kidneys. If you've ever considered becoming a living organ donor, or if you have someone in need of an organ transplant, visit MatchingDonors.com. Home of the greatest gift of all, the gift of life. MatchingDonors.com.
Good Monday to you. It's time once again for RFD Illinois. I'm DeLoss Yonke. Thanks for being with us. In just a little bit, we will hear from Illinois Farm Bureau President Rich Gebert, who on Thursday got some time with the Vice President of the United States. That's pretty good audience to get, and we will share a little bit of that in just a moment. Plus, news from D.C. and our Washington correspondent Matt Kay about next steps toward getting the 2018 Farm Bill accomplished. In the middle of last week, the House announced its conferees. Hopefully, activity will really ramp in September, and the current legislation expires at the end of September. Also on the program, corner economist Mike Doherty, senior economist at Illinois Farm Bureau, talking about a couple of different issues. To talk about the economy in general. Some top economists are saying let's hold on a little bit before we talk too much about tremendous economic growth. Is it something that can be sustained, especially like a 4% increase in GDP? He's a bit cautious about that. We'll also talk about Brazil and their situation with farmers and soybeans and safrinha corn crop, as well as high freight costs as a result of the trucker strike negotiations that took place earlier this year. So, plenty to talk about, plus latest markets and weather. Last week we gained about 14 for corn and about 30 for beans and close to 20 cents for wheat. Jim Taylor will have an update in a little bit on RFD today.
With this week's edition of Farm Week, the early word, here's DeLoss Yonke.
Scott Vander Wall, American Farm Bureau Federation Vice President and South Dakota Farm Bureau President, told federal legislators he'll lose $150,000 on his farm due to trade tariff impacts on corn and soybean prices. This week's edition of Farm Week tells his story and those of two additional state Farm Bureau presidents. Peoria County farmer Heber Vidal grows corn and soybeans like his neighbors, but he also produces another seed crop foreign to Illinois soils. Read about Vidal's Colombian coffee farm in the latest Farm Week.
No other Farm Weekly in Illinois has as many people on the ground in Illinois covering Illinois agriculture for you with the depth on key issues to help keep you profitable. And don't forget, you can get daily or even more frequent updates online anytime at farmweeknow.com.
Welcome back to RFD Illinois. I'm DeLoss Yonke. Illinois Farm Bureau President Rich Gebert last week was able to visit with Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence, and was able to talk about trade and tariff concerns that are affecting farmers in the Heartland. The Vice President gave a speech in St. Louis on Thursday and came across the river to support Congressman Mike Bost for his re-election efforts. President Gebert was quite positive about the experience.
Basically, what I told the Vice President is I said we've had 4 or 5 years of tough economic times on the farm. We have members that are probably going to have a tough time getting financing next year, and combines are probably 60 days away from hitting the field. And impressed on him, a way forward is we need to get to the table, get the negotiations done, get these trade agreements sealed, bilateral agreements, with Mexico, Canada, hopefully with Japan and the EU, that agriculture can get back on its feet and do what it does best, is provide food for the world. And so when the conversation was all said and done, having my picture taken with the Vice President, I thanked him very much for the opportunity. And he says, Rich, I got it. I'll share it with the President this evening when I get back to D.C. Can't ask for much more, and I really appreciate the opportunity to represent Illinois farmers and Farm Bureau members with the Vice President.
One of the things, especially with the second round for the China tariffs, which wouldn't kick in until August, but just that gave the impression, gosh, we could be in here for a long time, and that's the kind of insecurity that doesn't do well for markets and for attitudes of farmers.
Well, last week at the Council of Presidents and the AFBF Board of Directors meeting, we had Greg Dowd from USDR there and talk to us about the challenges and what's going on, and he thought that things could get resolved sooner with Mexico, Canada, and the EU, working on bilateral agreements with Japan. But he said the China deal is going to take a little while.
Illinois Farm Bureau President Rich Giebert in studio on Friday and was a guest on RFD today. More news out of D.C. The U.S. Senate is expected to vote early this week to go to conference with the House to come up with a single farm bill, hopefully before the current one expires. Our correspondent Matt Kay reports.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell plans a vote to conference the Farm Bill with the House soon after the Senate votes on a key nomination. The House acted last week, including naming conferees. Senate leaders would name Farm Bill negotiators soon after they vote, with a formal conference expected in September, since the House leaves for its August recess this Thursday. But time in September is short. Current law expires the 30th, and the House won't return till September the 4th. Top House Ag Democrat Colin Peterson reflected the growing concern during floor debate last week.
We have a lot of anxiety out in the countryside because of trade, because of RFS, because of low prices, because of weather in my area.
Peterson proposed instructing House conferees to defend the House's permanent $450 million for a new animal disease preparedness and response program, a long-sought U.S. vaccine bank, and the Animal Health Laboratory Network. The Senate leaves funding up to Senate appropriators.
The problem is that the APHIS and the people that deal with this at the state level can't depend on it because you never know what it's going to be from year to year because the appropriators are the ones that have to decide. So we want to make this permanent, and we're hoping that the Senate will cede to our ideas.
The motion reflected a rare moment of bipartisanship between Peterson and House Ag Chair Michael Conaway, anxious to get a farm bill before the current one expires.
The ranking member's motion is very much in the spirit of the House position, and I'm really appreciative of that. And quite frankly, it makes our bill better.
But no Democrats voted for the House Farm Bill, objecting to its added food stamp work and training requirements, opposition they plan to take into conference, siding with the Senate against the changes. The divergent stance complicates Farm Bill chances, raising the political stakes in an election year, with House Republicans and the President insisting on SNAP reforms, Democrats opposing them, and Senate Republicans split.
That's Matt Kay in Washington. Stay tuned. We'll have more to come on RFD Illinois.
Here in Illinois, it's everywhere, and it's used in so many things. We're talking about Illinois homegrown corn. It's fuel for your vehicle on the way to the game. It's a delicious corn-fed bacon cheeseburger that's the talk of the tailgate. Corn is even used to make things like plastic water bottles and lipstick. We're proud that Illinois runs on homegrown corn, and you should be too. Learn more about how corn shows up in unexpected places at watchusgrow.org/corn. A message from Illinois corn farmers and their checkoff.
Farm Week and FarmWeek.com journalist Kay Shipman connects rural routes for you. For 3 decades, Kay has delivered important news. She covers everything from legislative issues to the latest in soil and water conservation. Here's a bit about her rural roots.
I love covering so many aspects of agriculture and providing readers with the facts they need to make better decisions. I also get to work with farmers and meet new people along the way.
Be it routes or roots, RFD Radio, FarmWeekNow.com, and Farm Week keep you connected.
Welcome back to RFD Illinois on a Monday. I'm DeLoss Yonke, and we bring in, as always, the corner economist, Mike Doherty, senior economist at Illinois Farm Bureau. Hello, Mike.
Howdy, DeLoss.
What do you got for me?
And if we have time, we'll put in another plug. Farm Income and Innovations Conference
Sure.
is loaded,
yes,
chock full of great reasons to come.
Yep.
31st on Tuesday, come there for the night, be there all day or it's not even all day, be there for
8:30 to 3 in the afternoon.
Yeah, that's not too shabby.
Yeah, pork for dinner,
Ooh,
lunch.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, you all come.
Yeah.
So we touched on this last week. Brazil has this great opportunity to send all its soybeans to China.
Right.
If the soybeans would move along the chain, but apparently they're not moving.
I feel blessed sometimes by the government of Brazil. And this is one of those times, this is a moment for them. They are our largest competitor in the international soybean market. They may outproduce us. We never thought we'd get to that point, but they have gotten to that point. They're actually a big producer. But their supply chain, whether it be all the way back on the farms up in Mato Grosso or all the way down to getting to near the port of Santos, their largest port, that supply chain is not moving beans very fast, and especially the farmers, for what I'm hearing, they're sitting on their beans, not moving them.
Because of the trucker strike that was a couple of months ago.
Yeah, no, it's a little more recent. Yeah, I think it's like last month. So people are asking, they're like, well, the trucker strike is over, right? Well, yes. But they haven't announced what the new tariff rates are going to be, or the fees and
freight costs and all that.
Freight costs are going to be with the resolution of that strike. Yes.
So if those costs are too high, then the farmer's saying, "Why would I sell that?"
Yep. And you've got some other things. You've got changes in currency going on. You've got inflation going on. So you add these together, the farmers are like, "Wow, if there's a way I can sit on my beans for a while and not sell them, that's better than taking risk, putting them on a truck." Remember, they're doing, 90%, 85% of their volume of shipped beans go by semi-trailer, the equivalent distance of Des Moines, Iowa, to the Gulf of New Orleans.
Oh, my God.
On some
by
of them,
truck?
By truck, and some are not even on paved roads.
Yeah.
So if you're up there in Des Moines and you're faced with this, you go, okay, I load my beans up on this, I got to contract it to a trucker. He takes off, and then I find out, here's what I'm going to get charged.
Yeah, here's the freight cost.
Yeah, and I didn't make anything, or I even lost money. So I'm just going to sit on it till I find out what those are going to be.
You got to wonder if they have enough room to store the beans and the next corn crop.
That's the other thing that's happening. So they've got corn. They have a second corn crop that's increased every year. So it's, even though they have a smaller corn crop this year, that's a double corn crop that comes in after the beans. So they got that second, they call it safrina corn, means little corn crop. But they even though it's lower this year, it's still substantial, and they have no place to store it with all these, if they're sitting on these beans.
So they have the opportunity to send beans to China.
At a premium.
At a premium.
At a premium.
So hopefully this is just hypothetical, but could it really happen? Brazil buys beans from the United States and becomes the middleman, and then sells them at some sort of premium to China. So that the tariffs that we got put against us did nothing but drop the price. So we still move the beans, but they end up going to China at a far cheaper rate.
I'm thinking it would not make economic sense for us to send them down there just to get clogged up in their system. The ships would just go direct, you know. So, but you're on to something here, which is the chessboard and the pieces are being moved around in a crazy fashion. Like today, the announcement by USDA of the large sale of American beans to who? Pakistan.
Yeah.
What? Pakistan? Who would have known? Large population, but still. And so this is an example. We've got customers that we never had before because our beans are going to backfill what are not going to go into China due to the tariff that is applied only to U.S. soybeans.
You imagine a guy from the U.S. Soybean Export Council on the phone going, "No, who is this again?"
I'm wondering about people like
how'd you get my number?
Yes. I wonder how he's doing out there in Brussels today.
Man.
Going, whoa, this is crazy.
Fascinating. So the economy. We've talked so much about how the economy's booming.
It has been booming.
Some prominent guy says may not boom as much as you might say.
Well, yeah, hold on to your hats. They say that several prominent economists have come out and said they think this 4% GDP growth rate that we think we hit this quarter, we're not 100% sure. That will be subject to revisions, but that's what it's looking like. Second quarter, that is, so that just ended. That was the blip. That was a high point. And the next 2 quarters are going to come in lower because of several factors. Higher interest rates, inflation wiping out wage gains, nothing left to take out of savings, and American consumers being tapped out as far as how much credit they want to be carrying, how much debt. So you put all that together, they're basically running out of steam, and we're going to be back to, well, not a recession, a reasonable growth rate, but it's just not going to be 4%, probably back to 2.5% is what most of these recent announcements by economists are saying.
That wouldn't stink.
No, it wouldn't be bad. No.
4, considering 4 on top of 4 on top of 4.
Well, in 2% in first quarter.
Okay.
And that they said also reflected very low consumer comfort level in making big expenditures. So and lack of income, so growth. So 2%. Second quarter jumped up to 4%, back to 2%. So kind of coming out at about 2.5% for the year.
Gotcha.
That's what they're looking at.
You know, they say at Texas A&M, if you're not much of a fan, you're a 2%.
You're a 2%.
Did you know that?
No.
Yes. Don't ever call Blake Roderick in Piker Scott County a 2%, or else you are playing with fire. All right. That's corner economist Mike Doherty.
You,
and again, ILFB.org, Farm Income and Innovations Conference, August 1 in Normal at the Marriott, as we break now for markets and weather.
With the RFD Ag Market Summary for this Monday morning, I'm Jim Taylor. Corn, beans, and wheat all ending Friday higher. September corn closing at $3.55 and a quarter, up 4. December corn up 4, $3.69, and March corn $3.80, up 3.5. August beans closing at $8.49 and 3/4, up 3 3/4. September beans up 3 1/4, $8.55 and a quarter, and November beans $8.64 and 3/4, up 3 1/4. September wheat closing Friday at $5.16. Up 11 3/4. December wheat up 12.5, $5.33, and March wheat $5.48 and 3/4, up 12 3/4. August bean meal $3.26.90, down $1.90. August bean oil up 39 cents, $28.22. In current electronic overnight trading, September corn up 1.5, December corn up 1.5, and March corn $3.81.5, also up 1.5. August beans in the overnight up 2 1/4. September beans up 2 1/4, and November beans up 1 3/4, $8.66.5. September wheat in the overnight up 2 3/4. December wheat up 3, and March wheat up 3.5, $5.52 and a quarter. In the outside market, September Brent crude oil up 49 cents a barrel, $73.07. The August gold contract down $2.60 this morning, $12.28.50. In the livestock market, August lean hogs, $66.45, down 80 cents. October lean hogs down 95 cents, $51.27. August live cattle, $108.92, up 2 pennies. October live cattle, $110.25, down 40 cents. August feeder cattle, $153.67, down 77 cents. September feeder cattle, $154.55, down 22 cents. Illinois direct barrels and gilts trading steady on Friday at 40-50. And I'm Jim Taylor for the RFD Radio Network.
Good morning. This is Dan Hicks from Freeze Otis Weather with the early morning ag weather update on the RFD Radio Network for this Monday morning. Daytime highs in the 80s were common across a large part of the Midwest this past weekend, with a few warmer readings in the far south and a few cooler readings in the far north. A slow-moving weather system continued to produce some scattered showers and thunderstorms over the weekend in the eastern half of the Midwest. Some of this rain did affect the eastern part of Illinois. Farther west, it was drier, but a new system is producing a few showers and thunderstorms in the northwestern Midwest early today. This system to the west will affect mainly the western Midwest over the next 24 hours, with some scattered showers and thunderstorms expected. Farther east, in areas east of the Mississippi River, the first system will produce little or no significant rain over the next 24 to 36 hours. A second system moving in from the northwest will bring a better chance for some showers to Illinois about Thursday. Right now, though, it does look like rainfall amounts will be fairly light with this system, and much of the Midwest will have below normal rainfall amounts for this week. Daytime highs in the 80s will continue to be fairly common across the Midwest this week. A few low 90s will return to some south central and southwestern areas, especially right around midweek. The second system moving through the region Thursday into Friday will bring some additional cooler Canadian air southward into the region, with temperatures dropping a few degrees below normal across the Midwest late this week into the weekend. It does look like better rain chances will likely return to portions of the Midwest this weekend into the 6 to 10 day time frame, with near to above normal rainfall amounts in the southern and eastern locations and below normal amounts farther northwest. 6 to 10 day temperatures should average near to below normal in most areas.
Meet the new face of Illinois Farm Bureau, ILFB.org. A revamped website is your mobile-friendly go-to source for IFB, Ag, and beyond. All it takes is one click for your link to Illinois agriculture.
Click for involvement.
Learn about programs to help you become a better leader.
Click for action.
Find out how you can be an advocate for agriculture.
Click for resources.
Here you'll find helpful materials and information.
Click to explore.
Check out the role of agriculture in our economy and our world.
ILFB.org.
Your link to Illinois Ag.
All Ag.
All Illinois.
All now.
There are a lot of smartphone apps out there, but do they have what's important to us here in Illinois? The Farm Week Now app does, and it's always at your fingertips. All Ag, all Illinois, and 24/7 where and when you need it for free. Go to your app or Play Store on your smartphone, hit search, type in Farm Week Now, that's one word, and download it today. Brought to you by Illinois Farm Bureau, where we're all about farm, family, and food.
Farmers, are you seeing an increase in the loss of cattle and sheep in birthing pastures to federally protected vultures? Jackson County Farm Bureau wants to help lower that number. They are holding a black vulture mitigation workshop to help provide you with tools, resources, and techniques you need to disperse the flocks. Hear from Scott Beckerman, State Director of Wildlife Services for the USDA. This free program will be held Wednesday, July 25th at 6:30 p.m. at the Jackson County Farm Bureau. Contact their office with questions.
Be it through headlines, microphones, or tweets, Mike Orso connects rural routes for you. Mike has been covering farm and food issues for more than 3 decades. Whether it's print, video, radio, or feeding your online appetite, Mike keeps you in the loop. Here's a bit about his rural roots.
I keep our communities, state, and country in mind with everything I do. My job allows me to work toward this mission with farmers and other rural Illinoisans.
Be it routes or roots, RFD Radio, FarmWeekNow.com, and Farm Week keep you connected.
That'll do it for RFD Illinois on a Monday. We'll do it again tomorrow. Rita will be back in studio then as well. Meanwhile, we always salute a community. I'd like to choose 2 today. Sounds like these 2 could be relatives. Colona in Henry County, Colona, and Colusa in Hancock County, Colusa. Sounds like they could be first cousins if towns could have such affiliations. I'm DeLoss Yonke with Jim Taylor and Rita Frazier on the RFD Radio Network.
Do you need dental insurance? Then call Physicians Mutual Insurance Company for details. Not just a discount plan, real coverage for 350 procedures. Call 1-855-402-7556. Again, that's 1-855-402-7556. Offer is not available in Minnesota, Montana, New Hampshire, New Mexico, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Washington.
Radio. It's nothing new. It's been here all along with free entertainment, news, sports, music, and information. It's not just part of life. It's part of who we are. You know which station is going to tell you the score of the game, which one's going to give you a laugh in the morning, which one is going to give you something to sing along with. You know where to turn when the weather gets rough. When something big happens, good or bad, you know where to go because radio has been here all along. Radio is part of your community, woven into the fabric of what makes home, home. And now, radio has evolved to move with you with the Next Radio app and your FM-enabled phone. Just plug in your headphones to start experiencing radio in a whole new way while using way less battery and data than streaming apps. Check out the live guide to see and interact with live radio stations. Easily find your favorites like the one you're listening to right now. And as always, it's totally free. Download the Next Radio app today. Next Radio, live and local wherever you go.
I'm Rita Foley with an AP News Minute. Responding to criticism of his summit with Russia's Vladimir Putin, President Trump says he gave up nothing during the summit. The president is tweeting that hostile threats from Iran's president could bring serious consequences. His all-capital letters midnight tweet warning, "Never ever threaten the United States again," is getting a lot of attention. To which Press Secretary Sarah Sanders says,
"The president's responding to Iran, and he's not going to allow them to continue to make threats against America. If anybody is inciting anything, look no further than to Iran."
A Missouri hospital says all the people who survived when that duck boat ferrying tourists sank in a southern Missouri lake have now been released from the hospital. Many Americans trying to find a home to buy face prices that are climbing at roughly double the pace of wages. The typical sales price of a home, $277,000. I'm Rita Foley.
From CBC News, The World this hour. I'm Robert Zimmerman. Police have released few details about the man who opened fire last night in a busy Toronto neighborhood, killing 2 people. Investigators say the suspect covered several blocks, firing at people in Greektown. One witness says it happened very quickly.
He would just zigzag across the street. Wherever he saw people, he would head for a group of people and start shooting some easy targets.
The suspect was found dead a short time later after a shootout with police. The CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick has more.
Police told us this morning that they located the suspect when they arrived on the scene last night. They said that police or 911 calls started coming in around 10 p.m. and they got here very quickly. Were able to locate the suspect on a side street just off of Danforth Avenue where the exchange of gunfire happened. And then police telling us this morning that they found the alleged gunman dead on Danforth Avenue. Now, we don't know yet whether he died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound or whether his death was as a result of the interaction that he had with police. That is among the many details we're still waiting to learn today in the early hours of this investigation. But police also confirming this morning that a second person did die as a result of the shooting.
The CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick. Forest fires continue to burn out of control in parts of the country, including in northern Ontario. Air and ground crews are trying to get control of a major fire near Sudbury. About 24 fires are still burning in Ontario. In British Columbia, firefighters in the Okanagan say they have made progress, but high temperatures in the forecast are keeping officials on alert. Renee Filipponi has the latest from there.
Helicopters fly over the fire burning on a mountainside between Peachland and Summerland. They drop ping-pong-sized balls of fuel in strategic locations to ignite areas that crews can't get at, to burn anything the fire could use for fuel and control it. Glenn Burgess is the BC Wildfire Services Incident Commander.
The objective was to remove that fuel in a controlled circumstance at our timing when the weather was cooperating.
The cool weather over the weekend, along with these tactics, has Burgess confident the fire on Mount Aeneas, while still burning out of control, is less dangerous for the public and crews. The forecast for this week is creating some concern. The temperature will be above 30, and there is a possibility of dry lightning, which is how these fires got started last week. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Kelowna.
Japan has recorded its highest ever temperature as the country continues to struggle through a week-long heat wave. An area north of Tokyo hit 41.1 degrees. More than 50 people in Japan and South Korea have died during the heat wave. U.S. President Donald Trump is warning Iranian President Hassan Rouhani that he will face dire consequences for threatening the United States. Trump tweeted in all capital letters, "Never ever threaten the United States again, or you will suffer consequences the like of which few throughout history have ever suffered before. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo told a group of Iranian Americans that Iran is run by something that resembles the mafia more than a government.
Sometimes it seems the world has become desensitized to the regime's authoritarianism at home and its campaigns of violence abroad. But the proud Iranian people are not staying silent about their government's many abuses. And the United States, under President Trump, will not stay silent either.
Syria is condemning the evacuation of the White Helmets volunteer rescue organization. It says the removal was a criminal operation by Israel and its tools. The Israeli military pulled members of the group out of Syria this weekend at the request of the U.S. and Canada, amid fears the volunteers and their families might be targeted by Syrian troops. And that is the world this hour. You can live stream us at cbcnews.ca. For CBC News, I'm Robert Zimmerman.
Hardee's Happy Hour isn't your average happy hour. From 2 to 5 p.m., double sliders are only $1.25. Call it a charbroiled hour, a double beef hour, a whole lot of melty cheese hour. Call it what you want. Happy Hour at Hardee's is a good call. Offer for a limited time and only between 2 and 5 p.m. Price and participation may vary. Tax not included.
Well, a demonstration in Piedmont Park yesterday. They were demonstrating for the right of NFL players to take a knee during the national anthem. I really don't care. I haven't watched an NFL game in 2 years. Don't plan to this year. But we had one guy out there holding a sign up that said, "White people do better." Oh, really? I have a few things to say about that. The issue seems to be police officers shooting black males. Well, in 2016, the police fatally shot 233 blacks. Only 16 of them were unarmed, and most of them were in the process of attacking the police officer or violently resisting arrest. Black males do better. Then we have this statistic. Police have much more to fear from black males than black males have to fear from the police. 2015, a police officer was 18.5 times more likely to be killed by a black male than an unarmed black male was to be killed by a police officer. Come on, black males, do better. Let's take all of the homicides in this country, all of them, where the race of the killer is known. White killers of blacks numbered only 243. And remember this, young black males 17 to 28 years old, they're about 3.5% of the population. They commit over 1/2 of all murders. And it's the white people that need to do better. Statistics are such troublesome things. I hope the guy that was holding up that sign at Piedmont Park is listening. In the Solomon Brothers studios in Atlanta, this is Neal Boortz.
Hardee's Happy Hour isn't your average happy hour. From 2 to 5 p.m., double sliders are only $1.25. Call it a charbroiled hour, a double beef hour, a whole lot of melty cheese hour. Call it what you want. Happy Hour at Hardee's is a good call. Offer for a limited time and only between 2 and 5 p.m. Price and participation may vary. Tax not included.
Do you or a loved one have a chronic condition such as diabetes, a heart condition, or asthma? Do you or a loved one have a severe allergy to a certain food, drug, or insect? If you answer yes to any of these questions, you are a candidate for an electronic medical alert watch, the alternative to the traditional medical ID bracelet. An electronic medical alert watch visibly communicates a person's health conditions, drug, food, and other allergies, and other critical information to help make a diagnosis and save a life. Take control of your health. Protect yourself or your loved ones and order an electronic medical alert watch today. Visit www.epill.com. That's epill.com. Affordable, free shipping, and a 30-day money-back guarantee. Remember, www.epill.com. That's epill.com. ePill.
Welcome to your 20-minute podcast with David Brower, brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/your 20-minute podcast. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Now, here's your host, David Brower.
Thanks, Alan. This is David Brower with your 20-minute podcast. Our special guest today is Pastor Robert Thibodeau, who goes by Bob, been in ministry for 25 years, and he's the author of the new book, Blind Faith. Well, greetings from, I guess you're in Maryland, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Baltimore, Maryland.
All right. I'm in beautiful downtown Colorado. So
yeah.
Good to talk to you, Bob. So tell us about this book a little bit. How did it come about, and a little bit more about your background? I know you were in the Army. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Retired police. Thank you for your service.
Yep.
And along the way, in your spare time, you were a pastor for 25 years. So how did all that work out? How did that all transpire?
Well, actually, I've been in the ministry in some form or fashion for 25 years. I was assistant pastor at several churches. In 2001, we moved out here to Baltimore from Texas, and in the process of doing that, having not a difficult time finding a church, but just not one that we felt comfortable in. And
sure.
So we started our own church, and
wow.
That lasted for a couple of years until I got promoted in the police department aspect, and that started taking more of my time that I felt personally that I could not give the parishioners as much
Sure.
dedication is what I should be able to be a pastor. So we merged our church with another friend of mine, and I guess it's kind of like being a judge or a senator or something. Once you have that title, it just sticks. So everyone just kept calling me Pastor Bob.
It does. Coaches are the same way.
Yep.
I mean, I've known this coach for years. It's been retired for years, and I will never call him anything else but coach.
Amen. Well,
so I totally get that.
Well, in my ministry, the way I minister the word, I like telling stories. Jesus was a storyteller.
Yep.
And I just found it always interesting to dig into the characters a little bit. I've got stories on Elijah, and I mean just all these different characters. And this one day, as I was studying the scriptures about Jesus putting the mud on the blind man's eyes, and then told him go wash in the pool of Siloam. And it just, let's look at this. We always study, the miracle and all that.
Yeah.
What about this guy? I mean, where'd he come from? And what's his story? And, it says right there that he's been blind from birth.
Right.
And so that means he's never been able to contribute anything to society. He's in his family. Now he's old, and his family, has been having to take care of him. They take him every morning to drop him off at the gate. They go to work, and they come back, pick him up on the way home. And his job is to sit there and collect as much as he can from, offerings, alms, from people going into the temple. And that's his contribution to the family to take care of him.
Wow.
And, he's been blind, and he knows other blind people as well. And he keeps hearing these stories about this guy named Jesus that heals blind people too. And, talk about blind Bartimaeus, that's probably a buddy of his. I mean, Jerusalem isn't that big.
Right.
He knows, the people in the same condition he's in. Bartimaeus comes over, hey, yeah, this Jesus guy, he's great, and he's like, golly, he's probably bugging his family. Hey, take me to find this Jesus guy. Let's find out where he's preaching at. I want to go. And we're not wasting our time to take you all the way over there. And, there's crowds of people over there. You're never going to get to see them anyway. Just, forget about it.
Yeah.
And,
dude, you're blind. You can't see him.
Right. So, he wants to see him, but he just doesn't have anybody to take him over there. So every day he's sitting here.
Sure.
Just one day he hears, a little bit of a commotion with a crowd going by, and he's wondering what's going on. Then he hears the same comment or question that, he's heard his whole life. Who sinned, this guy in a prior life or his parents, that caused him to be born blind? And, he's heard that his whole life.
Sure.
This time he hears a different response. He goes, he didn't sin nor his parents. He's like this, to give God glory. And he's probably thinking about that like, wow, that's a weird response. I haven't heard that one before. And about that time,
right,
this guy's putting mud on his eyes. Now, if it was me, I'd have probably been swinging, okay?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was visualizing. I'm knocking you out, dude.
Exactly. I may be blind, but I can still hit you,
Right.
And but he's told just there's something about what's going on. Jesus probably with that soothing voice, tell him just chill out for a minute. And he puts this mud on his eye and said, "Now go wash in the pool of Siloam." Well, where he was at, going in at the Gate Beautiful, that is on the other side of town. Now, there's a pool right around the corner from where they're at. Jesus didn't tell them to go there. He told them to go all the way across Jerusalem to the other side of town, to the pool.
Wow.
Now, remember, he doesn't have anybody to take him there.
Well, I was just going to ask, how did, it's not like he had GPS or something.
That's right. And the pools on each end of the temple complex were what we would call baptismal pools. They're just ceremonial pools.
Okay.
People would change in, some churches had the baptismal garments. Right? So people would change in these garments, and they would walk down into the water, go underwater, come back up as a ceremonial cleansing before they went into the temple area to give their offerings. And because he was blind, that's a maimed type of condition, he was never allowed in the temple. He'd never been in the temple.
Yeah.
So he'd never been in the ceremonial pool, right? Well, he's got to walk all the way across town. He probably goes 3 or 4, 10 steps and stops and asks him which way to go. How do I get there? And he's had to answer all the way across town, where are you going? Why are you going over there? Why are you going to the pool? You can't get into the temple.
Well, and does he still have mud in his eyes? That'd be the other question, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And then they say, what's that on your face? Who put it on there? Why did he do that? You're crazy. Well, and somebody probably, come on, I'll take you a little way. I got to go this way. And, so he slowly makes his way across town and finally gets to where the pool is at. And there's a long line, naturally, as there would be going into the temple. And, they're asking him the same questions. Who put mud on your face? Why are you here? You're not supposed to be in this line. They're not going to let you in the temple.
Sure.
And all the way, and he's still giving the testimony. Every step he's going by faith. Jesus told me to go to the pool of Siloam and I would see.
Wow.
And that's his testimony. Every step, every time somebody helps him down to the next corner of the block, they're asking him the same questions over and over. What this is doing is reinforcing that spirit of faith in him.
Well, and the other thing, and I think it's pun intended, blind faith.
Exactly. That's the name of the book.
Right? Exactly. So, you got me captivated, man. Keep going.
Well, he gets to the pool of Siloam, and like I said, there's this long line there, and they're teasing him, ridiculing him, and mocking him. But when it comes time for his to step down into the pool, I can see every person in that area, their necks craning around the corners. They want to see what's going to happen.
Exactly.
And he goes down under the water, and you can just picture this, as he goes down underneath the water and then washes that mud off his face. And by faith, he's opening his eyes. And as he comes up out of the water, the first thing he sees is that big, blue, beautiful sky and the temple, all the, great ornamented decorations of the temple. Remember, he's never seen any of this before.
Right.
And he lets out a scream that could be heard all the way across town. The people in the pool area, they're going wild.
Right.
And now what happens next is there's such a commotion, the temple guards come down to, quell all this disturbance. What's going on down here? And they say, this guy was blind, he can see. And this guy's just going, he's
right.
going nuts right now. And hugging people, and everybody's hugging him. So the Jewish law says if there is a miracle that's taken place, they must be brought before the priest for them to verify the miracle. That's how he ends up in front of the temple priests. And they're like, what happened? And he goes, this guy named Jesus put mud on my face and told me to go across town. I did it, and now I can see. And they're like, wait a minute, the same Jesus that we've been hearing about? And, they start ridiculing,
Right.
Trying to corner him into this, call his parents. You say he was born blind. How can he see? Well, they don't want to get kicked out of the temple and excommunicated. Say, hey, he's old enough. Ask him. He can tell you what happened.
Yeah.
And, they ask him, and he gives the same thing. And they ask him again. He says, why do you keep asking this question? Do you want to be his disciple too? Oh, that did it. Boom. You're out.
Wow.
Excommunicated.
Yeah.
Kicked out of the temple. I mean, the guy has never been in a temple before, and his first day that you can see, he gets kicked out. And that's basically ostracized from Jewish society.
Sure.
And, now he's like wandering around, doesn't know what to do. Jesus hears about it, finds him, and just reinforcing. Now, remember, he didn't see Jesus.
Right.
When Jesus sees him, he walks up to him, and the guy's probably looking at him and says, what do you want? And as soon as Jesus started talking to him, he recognized the voice.
Right.
And he said, fell at his feet, Lord, and he said, just go on and tell everybody the testimony, and it'll be all right. And that's towards the end of the book. But
wow.
Main story is looking at that story from the perspective of the blind guy,
right,
instead of from the perspective of the disciples or Jesus or anybody else looking at it. It's his perspective, what he went through. And that's
I think what's fascinating about that, I mean, there's lots of things fascinating about that story, but one thing about the Bible, it's full of metaphors, and which makes it a most interesting read, because every time you read the same verse 10 times, you get 10 different perceptions,
Exactly.
But what's interesting about your story with this guy is, there's some people, a lot of people out there that have faith, have blind faith, don't have any faith. And what an interesting way to introduce that in such a miraculous way, if you will, to let people know, what the possibilities are. I mean, you don't have to be blind to see. You can, that's a line out of Amazing Grace,
Amen.
So, right? And so, just capture it. Just be open to going, what's that about?
Yep, that's right. Exactly right. And that's, I preached that sermon from that perspective, and that's one of the most popular ones. And I just felt led to put it in book form so it could be shared with anyone who wanted.
Good for you. So, and you've got stories either on paper or on your mind or wherever about other characters in the Bible. Do you have other books coming out as well?
Oh, yeah. I have one that I'm finishing up. I was hoping to have done by year's end. It'll probably be February before it's done. It's called The Samika of Jesus, and that is a long story. I know it's only 20 minutes. It'd take me that long just to introduce the story, but
I know, right?
In a nutshell, I'll just use one scripture.
Okay.
When Jesus said, "Take my yoke upon you," remember that verse? Okay.
Sure.
Everybody thinks about the yoke on a collar, with the bowls or whatever.
Right.
But in actuality, the yoke, now Jesus was called a rabbi. Everybody, rabbi, right? Teacher.
Right.
Why did they recognize him as a rabbi? So this book is looking at what the traditional Jewish boy would be growing up to be. Today we say baseball players, NFL players, or whatever. Back then, the Jewish boy wanted to be a rabbi.
Right.
But out of 1,000, they'd only pick about 10.
Fascinating.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's testing, like the kindergarten test to get into school.
Right.
By 5 or 6 years old, the kid had to memorize the book of Leviticus.
Wow.
Okay. Now, I don't know about you, but I just failed kindergarten. Okay. And
yeah, and big time. I can't even spell Leviticus, let alone read it all the way through.
To graduate elementary school at age 12 and then become a student of a rabbi, they had to have the first 5 books of the Torah, memorized, the first 5 books of the Bible, and be able to carry on a conversation with it, answer questions about it, keep the conversation centered around the Word, which you don't hear anything about Jesus' upbringing until age 12. And where do we find him at? In the temple.
Correct.
In the temple, and they said,
yeah. And he didn't get there by accident. He wasn't a blind guy with mud in his eyes. I mean, he did the work. He had to do the work.
Yeah, and what I think happened, and this is in the book, is my what they call writers, I'm talking about liberties with the storytelling.
Right. Right. Yeah.
The wise men that brought the gold, frankincense, and myrrh, in today's values is like $3 million.
Right.
So Jesus's parents went from being laborers to millionaires with these guys that brought them what God provided for the upbringing of Jesus, probably with private tutors and taking care of the family and all that. So he had the best instructors around. Right. And we don't hear anything else about it.
The best money could buy, as they say, right?
And we don't hear anything else after he was in the temple complex answering questions, and they were all amazed at his ability. That was just verifying that he was qualified to go on to be rabbi training.
Yeah.
Now, baptism is not something John the Baptist invented. That was throughout Israel. Every time there was a life change, you get engaged, you get married, all that, they would baptize you. Well, rabbis at graduation time had to be baptized in order to go, be classified as a rabbi. So where did Jesus end up? Getting baptized. All right?
By John the Baptist.
Exactly. And the rabbis, if we look at college today, if you're studying to be an accountant, you don't go down to the hospital one day and say, I think I want to try my hand at open heart surgery. Let me in, somebody. Right?
Right.
No, you were trained as an accountant. That's all you can do is accounting. Well, it's the same thing with different things with rabbis. There was rabbis that specialized in doing the offerings, and there were rabbis that specialized in doing counseling. There were rabbis that specialized in doing teaching, rabbis that specialized in accounting and all that other stuff. And you could only teach what your rabbi taught you, period. Okay?
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Yeah.
And that teaching is called their yoke.
Okay.
All right. So Jesus is teaching.
So yet another metaphor.
Exactly. Jesus.
Yeah.
Every generation, but once every 100 years or so, there was a special rabbi that would come around that had such an understanding of the biblical concepts, and he understood it all, and he was, he could give great analogies, and he just had such a great understanding that he was recognized at his rabbi graduation as having what is called samika. And samika,
I was going to ask you what that word was, yeah.
Samika is permission or authority to teach your own line of teaching. You create it yourself, and you have permission to teach your followers that line of teaching. Now, in order to receive samika, there had to be 2 witnesses to give verbal testimony to this fact at your baptism. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So we see Jesus coming down to be baptized by John the Baptist.
Right.
What does John the Baptist say? Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. Witness number 1.
Right.
Jesus goes down, and remember Jesus, John argued, hey, I need to be baptized by you. Jesus said, no, we have to do this to fulfill biblical things. Right. So down he goes. He comes up out of the water. He's still only got 1 witness. What happens? God himself verbally gives confirmation.
Wow.
Right? Behold my son, in whom I'm well pleased. Right? Witness number 2, he now has samika. What does all the crowds following Jesus mean? They heard somebody has samika.
Yeah.
Remember, it's only like once every 100 years. And what do they say? He doesn't teach like the other rabbis teach. He teaches as one having authority. That word authority is translated samika.
Wow.
All right. And then Jesus told his disciples, he goes, take my yoke upon you. Take my teaching. What's Jesus' teaching? Everywhere he went, the love of God.
Right.
And as a disciple of Jesus, that's the only thing we can teach is the love of God, because we can only teach what our rabbi.
Man, that is like over the top good stuff. I got to tell you, I would think, and I don't know this for sure whether this is in your plan or not, but I would think each one of your books would just be an amazing Bible study.
That's what they're designed to do. Hopefully, they would be used in that fashion. That'd be a dream of mine.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, we're about out of time, so I want to give folks your contact information and so they can learn more about you and about your book and your podcast. You have a Kingdom Crossroads podcast, right?
That's correct, yeah. www.kcrpodcast.com.
Okay. And your website is evangelismradio.com?
That's for the radio station. We have an online Christian radio station that plays 24 hours a day.
Okay.
We now have 50 different broadcasters under contract for it.
Right.
And it's free. It's offering basis. Some people, they can't send anything. That's all right. We still put them on.
Okay.
But we make it affordable. That's evangelismradio.com. My personal website is FTFM for Freedom Through Faith Ministries.com. I'm sorry, .org.
.org. So FTFM.org.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, cool. Bob Thibodeau, fascinating. I mean, that was like lightning fast 20 minutes, man. We could have went on for a while.
Amen.
So, first of all, thank you for your service. Thank you for your faith. Thank you for your writing ability to share the gospel. And I wish you a Merry Christmas.
Oh, you too, brother. I appreciate you having me on. I enjoyed it.
All right, likewise. Take care, Bob.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Your 20-minute podcast with David Brower has been brought to you by Audible. You can listen to any of David's podcasts anywhere podcasts can be found, including iHeartRadio, the Spotify mobile app, and at davidbrowervo.com/your 20-minute podcast. Until next time, thanks for listening.
Hey, Steve Harvey here for the Illinois Broadcasters Association, and in a recent survey, the Illinois Emergency Management Agency was asked to name the top 5 items that every Illinois family needs to have in their home's emergency disaster kit. Check out these answers. Water, can't live without it. Number 2, non-perishable food. Well, after all, a man gotta eat, right? Number 3, weather radio, and make sure you got fresh batteries too. Number 4, flashlight. Even more reason to have fresh batteries on hand. Number 5, first aid kit. Look, there's no reason to feud over what items to put in your family's emergency disaster kit. Get the answers and more at ready.illinois.gov. That's ready.illinois.gov.
Sponsored by the Illinois Emergency Management Agency, aired in cooperation with the Illinois Broadcasters Association and this station.
Radio. It's been here all along. You know which station is going to tell you the score of the game or where to turn when the weather gets rough. When something big happens, good or bad, you know where to go. And now radio has evolved to move with you with the Next Radio app in your FM-enabled phone. Just plug in your headphones to start experiencing radio in a whole new way while using way less battery and data than streaming apps. Find your favorite stations like the one you're listening to right now. Download the free Next Radio app today. Next Radio, live and local wherever you go.
Divers down in a Branson, Missouri lake. I'm Dave Anthony, Fox News, trying to raise that duck boat that sank last week. The morning after that bell rang 17 times at a memorial church service. Fox's Jeff Manasso is following it all live.
Dave, the Coast Guard is now beginning a salvation operation using a crane and a barge with an 80-foot reach to the bottom of Table Rock Lake, where the duck boat sits. It was filled with tourists. It sank Friday during a storm and 70-mile-per-hour winds, killing 17. We're told a digital recording device from the duck boat has been recovered, and once the boat is brought to the surface, it'll be taken to a secure facility for further inspection and investigation by the National Transportation Safety Board. Dave.
Jeff, they're still trying to figure out why in Toronto, Canada, the day after a man went on a shooting spree, killing 2, wounding 12 others.
This is an attack against innocent families and against our entire city.
Mayor John Tory. The gunman later died after getting into a shootout with police. Iran's media is dismissing as passive President Trump's tweet warning that country's president to never ever threaten the United States again. Fox's John Decker, live at the White House.
National Security Advisor John Bolton is reinforcing President Trump's threats against Iran, saying in a statement, "I spoke to the president over the last several days, and President Trump told me that if Iran does anything at all to the negative, they will pay a price like few countries have ever paid before." Bolton's comments come roughly 12 hours after the president took to Twitter and issued an all-caps warning to the Iranian leadership. The president appeared to be responding to a warning from Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, in which he said that pursuing hostilities against his country could lead to the mother of all wars. Frank?
And John, the president used to make similar threats to North Korea. Now, after his summit with Kim Jong-un, the attempt to get him to give up nuclear weapons, the president tweets that the fake news is saying, through anonymous sources, he's angry. It's not going fast enough. The president writes wrong. He's very happy. Fox News. Fair and...
Are you hiring, posting your position to job sites and waiting for the right people to see it? ZipRecruiter knew there was a smarter way, so they built a platform that finds the right job candidates for you. ZipRecruiter learns what you're looking for, identifies people with the right experience, and invites them to apply to your job. These invitations have revolutionized how you find your next hire. In fact, 80% of employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. And ZipRecruiter doesn't stop there. They even spotlight the strongest applications you receive so you never miss a great match. The right candidates are out there. ZipRecruiter is how you find them. Businesses of all sizes trust ZipRecruiter for their hiring needs. Right now, our listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/newscast. That's ZipRecruiter.com/newscast. ZipRecruiter.com/newscast. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
President Trump also tweeted today, over the weekend also, about Russia and what he calls the witch hunt. The special counsel probe he claims was started by what he labels the fake dirty dossier paid for by Democrats, referring to anti-Trump research done by a former British agent used in part to get a surveillance warrant on a former Trump campaign advisor the FBI believed might be collaborating with Russia.
That application and those renewals have been vindicated in substantial part by Carter Page's own words.
Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff told ABC Page admitted he was an informal advisor to the Kremlin, but Page told CNN,
"This is so ridiculous. It's just beyond words."
House Intelligence Committee Republican Chairman Devin Nunes is upset entire pages of the warrant application are blacked out. He tweeted time to eliminate redactions the day after the document was made public. Appearing on Fox and Friends, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders was asked if President Trump will demand the Justice Department release more of the FISA application to Congress.
The president would like this to operate independent of him, but he certainly has asked for the Department of Justice to be transparent in this process.
In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
2 terrorists who were part of that kidnapping and murdering of American hostages for ISIS, maybe a step closer to coming to America to trial.
Alexander Koti and El Shafi al-Sheikh were captured in Syria in January. US and UK authorities have been discussing how and where they should face justice. Britain's Daily Telegraph newspaper says the UK has now suggested the men be prosecuted in the US and that Britain is prepared to waive its long-standing objection to the death penalty. The men are accused of taking part in the kidnap, torture and murder of Western hostages as members of a group of 4 ISIS militants known as the Beatles for their English accents. In London, Simon Owen, Fox News.
On Wall Street, some selling to start the week. The Dow is down 50 points. I'm Dave Anthony, Fox News Radio.
Today we decided to walk to school. The light counted. 15, 41, 31, 13. We took a left on Raccoon Street.
Danny's smart.
So many sounds.
He's distracted.
I realized
he forgot his homework.
I hope I don't have another bad day at school.
When you can see learning and attention issues from their side, you can be on their side. That's why there's Understood.org, a free resource for the parents of the 1 in 5 kids with learning and attention issues. Go from misunderstanding to Understood.org. Brought to you by Understood and the Ad Council.
They were outnumbered, out-equipped. They had no chance of winning, but they had one huge advantage: General George Washington.
The fate of unborn millions will now depend, under God, on the courage and conduct of this army. We have to resolve to conquer or die.
Just as the leadership of one man helped form a nation, today leadership can transform the world. Leadership is in you. Now pass it on from passiton.com.
This is RFD Today, a daily look at the key topics impacting rural Illinois. If you live in Illinois, we examine the issues impacting you, your income, and your community. Here's your host for today's program, Bill Shonky.
Hey, good Monday to you, Illinois. Thanks for joining us for this adventure in broadcasting on the 23rd of July. Coming up in just a couple of minutes, we'll talk to Jeff Adkison, Grain and Feed Association of Illinois. And even though it's July, the plans are in place, trying to understand the logistics for harvest. And, with so many growing degree days more than average, that means a fast-moving crop. And for some folks, maybe not right around the corner, but pretty close to around the corner for starting harvest talk and how to get ready for that sort of thing, especially if we're going to bust the bins again. And, for some, to get to the end of August and you're starting to, you're talking about, do we hold last year's corn? No incentive to sell old corn. And we could really be getting at it from a capacity standpoint. So we'll talk to Jeff about that in just a little bit. Chris Hurt will be on the program later. He is livestock economist at Purdue. Illinois Farm Bureau Vice President Brian Duncan and I had a chance to visit with him. We talk hogs primarily and not a rosy scenario if these trade concerns linger. And even just for a few months, we could be in big trouble. You look at that October contract in Chicago and see the trouble on the way. Also, it is Monday. We'll talk to Dale Durkle, senior analyst at AgriVisor. But first, we'll hear from this week's Crop Watcher. This week's Crop Watcher is Ron Hass in Iroquois County. Gosh, you were so dry so early. Hopefully you guys got caught up at some point this season.
No, as far as the boys were showing their corn and soybeans at the Iroquois County Fair and was looking it up on the rainfall for their projects. We're 5 inches behind since planting has occurred. So another way to look at it said we're like 66% of the average for the last 10 years. So we're behind.
Well, how's everything holding up then without enough moisture?
Well, it looks good right now, and we're just going to need to keep getting some rain to sustain it without the extra water in the subsoil.
You just watch it all go south of you?
Yeah, there's been some pop-up showers. I know it rained. We were at the county fair, and it rained on us there. We got home. We didn't have any. We had a 10th on Saturday and a 10th on Sunday. We've gotten rains. We just haven't gotten an abundance of rains, I guess is the best way to put it. Right around the July 4th, we had a nice rain that anywhere from 0.8 to 2 inches on some farms. That was a big, important one for us at that point in time, especially with pollination going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one more soaker would be awfully valuable, I would think, then.
Yes, it would. We got our beans planted. We planted our beans this year before the corn with the cold soils. They're further along than what they have been, especially with the warm weather. And we also strip-tilled ahead of our soybeans this year, so that gave them a little bit quicker start than when we no-tilled them in the past. They're the tallest beans we've had taken to the county fair because we had to kind of push them over to get them inside the truck cab. And
wow.
I don't even think we've had that going to the state fair the last couple of years, taking soybeans there. So,
did they come up right away when you planted them so early?
It took about 3 weeks with the colder temperatures. We figured that whatever population damage maybe the cold soils might provide would be less harmful to soybeans than corn, and so that's kind of why we planted the soybeans first. We have been trying to get them in April the last couple of years, which we've been fortunate to do. They've always been planted in April recently. It was just this year the weather and the strip till got them off to a better start.
Well, leave all those windows down. Hopefully you can get a nice soaker here at the end of July to really finish that corn crop.
And with the early planted beans, July's kind of June and July are kind of important too as far as rainfall because of the earlier development.
Ron Hass in Iroquois County can get his and all the reports of crop watchers in each week's edition of Farm Week. Welcome back to RFD Today. I'm DeLoss Yankee on a Monday with Jeff Atkinson and the Grain and Feed Association of Illinois. Jeff, how are you?
I'm doing very well today, DeLoss. Always a pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you. Always glad to have you. And, the old 4-H meetings, we would start with old business first. And if I have time for Dale later today, and I'll ask him, what do we do with our old crop corn? We've got 5 weeks to figure out before the contracts continue, and not a whole lot of price incentive to move that last 10 or 15%.
No, there really hasn't been. It doesn't seem like it, and it's one of those situations where there may be a lot more corn carried into the fall than what we normally have, and I think there could be some situations, perhaps maybe some elevators might put out some delayed price contracts or price later contracts, whatever you want to call them, and maybe encourage some opportunities for movement that way. But yeah, with having a fair amount of crops still in storage, that's always a situation this time of the year when you had an abundant harvest. And while we would much rather be storing grain than air in the situations where there's a poor crop, it works out sometimes that it can make a challenging logistic situation for our industry.
Yeah, if we're still holding quite a bit of the old stuff and the new stuff's going to get here before we know it, that doesn't sound like I don't know, that could be good for business, but that sounds like a whole heck of a lot to have to deal with in the next few weeks.
Yeah, it sure is. And, I think as we do talk about the old crop a little bit that might still be out there maybe in farmers' bins, we do strongly encourage farmers to get out there and check the quality. And if you're planning on keeping it, just keeping what you've got in your bins and taking the rest taking it to the elevator this year, while we have no problem bring it to the elevator, we do want to make sure the farmers do get out there and check the quality in their bins, make sure it smells good, make sure it's not crusted over, and all those sort of safety things that we talk about from time to time. And if you are getting it out of the bin, make sure that if there's something that's happened that's not flowing anymore, don't go in the bin with the equipment running. This is the time of the year where you do see problems like that, where you've got a crust or a clump of grain. People go into the bin with a rod to try to break it up when the equipment's running, and that's not a safe way to do that. So we do encourage farmers to get out there and make sure the quality in those old crop bins are still good.
Yeah, lock out, tag out, and the best and the worst way to break those clods, you want to have all your strength with you, and so you might just knock it, with that rod between your feet there, and if that all of a sudden gives way, then you're standing on over the spot that just gave way, and that's where trouble really happens.
Yeah, exactly right. And, unfortunately, we've seen that time and time again. We've also, when it's been crusted over, that people don't realize that, a few loads have been taken out, and they go in and it's crusted over, and that doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen from time to time where the weight of the person walking on the top then creates enough weight for the grain to cave in, and they are, even if the equipment's not running, all that grain comes down on top of them. And we just want to make sure people stay safe and can enjoy the harvest this year, and are around to enjoy their families as well.
Absolutely. So we've got old crop coming in. We've got old crop still in storage. We've got what could be another big new crop coming in. So that's a lot of grain to handle.
Yeah, and the industry continues to expand. The industry continues to grow as far as putting up new grain bins. I mean, one can simply has to drive around the countryside to see, or small rural towns, and you can see that there's some shiny new steel at the local grain elevators where they've been putting up new bins. But boy, when you continue to have increased yields, you continue to have increased speed at which the harvest comes in, it really makes for can make for a challenging time to try to find where to put everything. But the industry continues to expand and grow and put up new facilities and new handling structures as well.
If the farmers are putting up new bins and they're probably bigger than the ones that replaced, or if they're just putting up storage for the first time, is that necessarily bad for your business, or is that just an evolution in the business that you have to roll with?
Well, I think there has to be a good mix within the industry, within the ag industry. The farmers have to make the business decisions that they want to make, and we certainly don't discourage that. I guess what we want to make sure is that if they are putting up those bins, that they do know how to manage the aeration. They do know how to manage the system. It's just you get into the commercial size, what some have termed farm commercial kind of operation, where you have a lot higher capacity. It's not necessarily a bad thing, and it's probably a good thing to have a certain amount of balance within the agricultural industry between farm and commercial.
If I could squeeze this question in, too, the notion of 320 corn or whatever that number is may not even be that good, and, the cost of drying doesn't necessarily fit this year, with some elevators could certainly depend on that as part of their business.
Well, and I think another factor that plays into that too is just the cost to build a bin. One of our members indicated they built a new bin, and then they actually a few months later decided they wanted to actually build a second one. And they went back, and with the cost of steel going up, the cost to build that bin was going to be 20% higher than what the original one had been.
Yeah, the talk of 25% tariffs, and what do you know, that even domestically the price of steel went up 20% in a pretty quick period of time. So, yeah, that could certainly play on somebody's, whether or not they want to dig another hole.
Exactly right. That's all part of what has to be taken into consideration. But I wouldn't think that there'd probably be too many farm bins being built with price of grain where it's at over this year anyway, and maybe the next year or so.
All right, hang on. We're up against the break. Jeff Atkinson is Executive Vice President of the Grain and Feed Association of Illinois at GFAI.org, and we'll talk more next, including an early soybean harvest as well, most likely. That's still to come on RFD today.
With this week's edition of Farm Week, the early word, here's DeLaw Schonke.
Scott Vanderwall, American Farm Bureau Federation Vice President and South Dakota Farm Bureau President, told federal legislators he'll lose $150,000 on his farm due to trade tariff impacts on corn and soybean prices. This week's edition of Farm Week tells his story and those of two additional state Farm Bureau presidents. Peoria County farmer Heber Vidal grows corn and soybeans like his neighbors, but he also produces another C crop foreign to Illinois soils. Read about Vidal's Colombian coffee farm in the latest Farm Week.
No other Farm Weekly in Illinois has as many people on the ground in Illinois covering Illinois agriculture for you, with the depth on key issues to help keep you profitable. And don't forget, you can get daily or even more frequent updates online anytime at farmweeknow.com.
Are black vultures attacking your farm animals? The complaints from farmers losing calves, lambs, birthing cows, and ewes to this federally protected bird continue to increase. Find out what you can and can't do at an informational clinic sponsored by the Jackson County Farm Bureau. This black vulture mitigation workshop will provide you with necessary tactics to disperse these flocks. Head to the Jackson County Farm Bureau office on July 25th at 6:30 p.m. for this free informational program. Contact their office with questions.
When it comes to our members, Chris Magnuson connects rural routes for you. Chris leads Illinois Farm Bureau's efforts to provide valuable information to our members. He has spent 2 decades with IFB. Here's a bit about his rural roots.
I grew up on a farm with corn, soybeans, and Christmas trees. I've been in ag communication for 3 decades now. My greatest satisfaction has always remained the same, to serve our members.
Be it routes or roots, RFD Radio, FarmWeekNow.com, and Farm Week keep you connected.
I have a lifetime of experience as a financial planner.
A lawyer.
A homemaker.
An educator.
A mechanic.
A nurse.
You know what I am now?
I'm a Senior Corps RSVP volunteer.
I build homes and young minds.
I build parks and playgrounds.
And support our nation's veterans.
I build gardens and help families with their finances. I build healthy futures.
And organize disaster relief. I build teams and friendships.
And families.
I build lives and communities.
And myself. I'm a builder, and I lead by experience. How about you?
Join Senior Corps RSVP.
Lead by experience.
At seniorcorps.gov.
All right, welcome back to RFD today on Monday. I'm DeLoss Yonke with Jeff Adkisson, Executive Vice President of the Grain and Feed Association of Illinois. So as we continue to plant soybeans earlier, and, you know, we've seen this the last couple of years where corn's not drying fast enough, and what do you know, soybeans are down to 10% moisture, so let's start moving soybeans. So that has certainly evolved over the last few years of soybeans maybe not being first, but being a lot closer to the front of the line.
Yeah, it just is amazing how harvests change from one year to the next, and based on, you know, a lot of different things, planting dates, growing degree days, and all the other scientific information we have now. But I really noticed too in July how the soybeans tended to shoot up, and I know your crop watcher was talking about how tall his soybeans were.
Yeah.
Boy, I echo that opinion anyway of how it seems like you through a lot of Illinois, not the whole state, but through most of Illinois, any of the soybeans just seem like they have really grown early, or grown a lot and earlier than we've expected. But like you say, when you got an earlier planting date, soybeans do like their feet dry, and we've kind of had a little drier weather than what we've had and than what we might have expected, and I think overall that has really helped soybeans grow and develop, and that could mean an earlier harvest for them as well, which, you know, there again it creates a little bit of logistics issues sometimes at the elevator where you're trying to receive corn and beans, and you know which pits do you have where at, and that kind of situation. But overall, I do think we will be seeing we're going to be seeing the whole crop early, but definitely I think the beans will be a little bit earlier as well. And just kind of depends on what Mother Nature gives us over the next 30 days. But there's a good possibility it's going to be early.
I would think there'd be some elevators with, you know, this is the corn bin, this is the soybean bin, but there may be that one this year where they may even still be wondering, okay, which are we going to need to use this one for? You know what I mean? Is this going to be a corn bin, or is this going to be a soybean bin?
You're exactly right. That's a big question in when it comes to the logistics. And typically, the grain elevators, they don't like to put crop out in temporary piles or emergency piles. But if they have to, they're going to they'll definitely put corn out there, and that corn might have normally gone into a bin. But this year, because of the logistics of it, they may have to put put the corn out some of the corn out on the ground and put make that a soybean bin instead of a corn bin this year.
Wow, so that's a lot to contend with, and pretty soon for quite a few folks. And just a reminder then that there's going to be a lot of slow-moving vehicles on the roadway, maybe even by Labor Day this year, don't you think? Some of your guys talking about maybe even late September or late August?
Late August is definitely a possibility. It's kind of interesting. We had a board meeting about 10 days ago or so, and everybody we always kind of go around the room and do a little crop update on what people think what there's going to be happening. And there's some people who are talking definitely late August. I've been with the association long enough that we always have typically have a board meeting in late August, and there have been a couple of years over the course of my time here that our attendance of that August board meeting has been pretty slim because of the fact that the crop has already started to roll in, and I'm already kind of scratching my head on that one a little bit, wondering if we might be a little bit slim with that one. But that's okay if it is. That's the way it works out. But the fact that we probably will be seeing some in and at the end of the month, and you're right, the transportation is such a big deal, and there will be those great big combines out there on the roads. There'll be the trucks, there'll be the wagons, all that sort of stuff that people need to be thinking now to take that extra precaution and just being safe out there. So that's always something that people need to keep in mind when it comes to the transportation system. Anything else on the radar for you guys? I'm sure, if we don't have markets to export to, then that certainly can hurt some folks depending on where they are in the transportation chain here. Yeah, you're exactly right, and I'll touch on a couple of things there. The first of all, on the trade side, anybody can read as much about that as I can. I don't have any special insight on that, but it does seem that the trade and the exports have been robust over the last several months, and I think the question that hangs in a lot of people's minds is that strictly a factor that there was some early buying of quantities of beans or whatever it might be that were moved out in anticipation or of knowing or of feeling that these tariffs were going to be put into place. And so I think there's kind of that question that hangs out there for a number of people, and think that, well, maybe we're seeing some early movements that things will drop off as time goes by. There's some that and some we've talked to that really feel like this is going to be a prolonged issue. I don't think anybody really wants to hear that, but yet on the other hand, we have to be realistic about it and understand that might be the situation. You also mentioned a little bit about transportation there, just the whole logistics of that, starting on Wednesday in near the Washington, D.C. area, the National Grain and Feed Association and I think it's the Soy Transportation Coalition are having a transportation summit out there in Washington, D.C., and that'll be a real good program that they've got different segments, one on ports, they got one on the rail lines, I think one on, probably just the whole river system and things of that nature, containerization on the waterways. Yeah. Just that type of thing. So that'll be very interesting to see what kind of transportation situations or maybe solutions come out of that. Yeah, Secretary Perdue's speaking at that, in fact, this week as well. Jeff, we got to scoot. Hey, thanks so much. Thanks a lot. Jeff Adkisson, more to come on RFD Today.
Stay tuned for more on RFD Today, right here on the Illinois Farm Bureau Radio Network.
Corn. Thanks to Illinois corn farmers, you can see it just about everywhere here in the land of Lincoln. What you may not know is the unexpected places you can find corn, like your gas tank. 97% of all fuel sold in the U.S. is a 10% ethanol blend. And here in Illinois, we're a top producer of ethanol. Not only does it drive your car, it drives our economy. Be sure to proudly choose an ethanol blend at the pump the next time you fill up. Illinois runs on homegrown corn and Illinois-made ethanol. Visit ilcorn.org to find out more. A message from Illinois corn farmers and their checkoff.
Farm Week and FarmWeekNow.com journalist Daniel Grant connects rural routes for you. With more than 2 decades of reporting under his belt, Dan is the go-to source for farmers when it comes to commodities. Here's a bit about his rural roots.
I grew up on a grain and livestock farm near Roseville in Warren County. What I love about my job is working with people, traveling across Illinois, and visiting farms along the way.
Be it routes or roots, RFD Radio, FarmWeekNow.com, and Farm Week keep you connected.
Farm, family, food. Those 3 words best describe Illinois Farm Bureau. Farm. For 100 years, Farm Bureau in Illinois has represented and served the men and women who make Illinois one of the top food-producing states. Family. At the heart of rural Illinois are traditional farm families who work together through Illinois Farm Bureau. And food. Farm Bureau families are proud to grow the healthy food they provide their families and yours. Farm, family, food. The heart of Farm Bureau in Illinois.
Is your farm thriving or merely surviving? Even for the most seasoned Illinois farmer, today's markets are difficult to navigate. Sudden policy shifts, changing consumer tastes, and progressive technology present new challenges as well as opportunities. Illinois Farm Bureau wants to help you make the most of the opportunities and overcome the challenges. We're bringing top specialists from Illinois and around the country to you on July 31st and August 1st for our Farm Income and Innovations Conference at the Marriott in Uptown Normal. Speakers such as Jim Wiesmeyer, Eric Snodgrass, and Ron Hansen will inform and instruct you on how to move your farm from surviving to thriving. Register now at ilfb.org/FIIC. Join us and take this opportunity toward a thriving farm.
All ag.
All Illinois.
All now.
There are a lot of smartphone apps out there, but do they have what's important to us here in Illinois? The Farm Week Now app does, and it's always at your fingertips. All ag, all Illinois, and 24/7 where and when you need it for free. Go to your app or Play Store on your smartphone, hit search, type in Farm Week Now, that's one word, and download it today. Brought to you by Illinois Farm Bureau, where we're all about farm, family, and food. Welcome back to RFD Today. I'm DeLoss Yonke. On Friday, Illinois Vice President Brian Duncan and I had the pleasure of visiting with Purdue longtime ag economist Chris Hurt. And the first question was about the hog contracts in Chicago with August in the mid-60s. But on Friday, the October contract settled at $51.27, much less than the cost of production, and certainly a warning of what's to come if these trade concerns continue.
Well, that's correct. And obviously, as we look at hogs, they are one of our commodities that are very important to Illinois, that are affected not only by big supplies but by tariffs. So both in grain and hogs, and I think in milk, what we see is on the grains, higher yields with the generally very good weather we've had across the Midwest. Higher yields tend to get you started towards lower prices. But both on milk and pork, we got a lot of supply coming, and then have the tariffs on top of that will weaken demand. As I've run some numbers, current numbers on hogs, and looking at losses that are this in the fourth quarter this year, that would be as bad, well, not as bad, but be the worst losses we've seen since, dare I say it, the fourth quarter of 1998, that tragic time period we had in the hog industry. Again, not quite as big of losses projected at this point, but your observation is right on. Those are extremely far below cost of production kind of futures prices that are being suggested at this time.
As soon as you said, dare I say, I was afraid you were going to say 1998, so that was an awful time when the cash price got down to $10 or worse.
I've got to open your July 10th article for Farm Doc entitled "Too Much Pork, Tariffs Mean Too Few Buyers." I am still an independent pork producer, raise hogs in northwest Illinois, somehow managed to weather 98 and actually
grown our business the last few years with our eye on export markets. And we, as you well know, have new packing plants coming online, some of them going to double shift. I mean, pork, and then the latest Hogs and Pigs report shows that we've got the most hogs, the most sows that we've had since the report started being accumulated. We were all gearing up and eyeing the export market, and now I see the second half of your article says tariffs mean too few buyers. Can you reconstruct a scenario that if this tariff situation hadn't happened, what kind of a hog market we'd be looking at?
Well, we were looking at probable losses anyway, I think, in terms of the hog market. Several estimates have been made on how much the tariffs, if they stay in place as they currently are, and I think we have to consider that tariffs could even go up higher with the current direction that the Trump administration is going and laying out new tariffs and several more waves of new tariffs that they say they're going to bring. So we can't even be assured that we're done with seeing all the tariffs on our U.S. pork that might go into the export market. I've been using a factor of about $7 to $8 per carcass hundredweight, lower prices due to the tariffs that we have in place. That's now about 50% tariff, additional tariffs, we should say, with China for U.S. pork, trying to enter that market, and the 20% going to Mexico. And so those those represent about 9% of U.S. production that we sent to those two countries last year. That's 40% of the volume of our exports. And you are right. What we recognized in the pork industry over the last 20 years is that the U.S. domestic market was going to grow around 1% a year. And as an industry, we could get that growth rate on up to 2-3%, maybe in some years 4%, if we would really turn to the higher growth market of the export market. That's what we did. And so now we're at a point where we've really been expanding production since 2015 after PED cut the production quite sharply. And we basically we're at a production level that we probably were going to lose a little bit of money even if we didn't have any tariffs. So I think the tariffs and the big supplies, a little bigger than we anticipated on this breeding herd growth, up 3.5%. What that says is, and futures markets are reflecting, is that this is going to be a really difficult time period to get through, and we're going to have to look at our cash flow situation very carefully. We're going to have to work with our lenders. And, of course, we're doing everything we can as pork producers on a cost of production standpoint. And I think the reality for the industry is that if we do not get a resolution fairly quickly in a few months on the pork tariffs, we're probably going to have to downsize the herd in 2019. Downsizing the herd means going into a period of contraction of the industry where we start reducing the number of sows that we have.
Chris Hurt and also Brian Duncan, Illinois Farm Bureau Vice President. And Brian asked Chris, how many pigs do the Packers own? He says between ownership and contracts, he said anywhere between 40 to 60%. Now, do you think that part is going to get contracted if contraction is necessary? And if there's a contraction that takes place, whether that's 10 or 20 or maybe even 25% of the sows, that's a whole lot. I mean, that's not pork chops necessarily, but that's a whole lot of ground pork on the market. You might see sort of a dairy buyout type scenario if all of a sudden you liquidate that many sows in a short period of time. Not a good scenario. More to come on RFD today.
Join Illinois Farm Bureau and several partners as we get to know your ag environment. This free event takes place on Wednesday, August 8th at Gold Star FS in Woodhull. Learn about a variety of topics including soil health and the Farm Bill. Lunch will be provided. Network with local farmers and don't miss out on an opportunity to apply new knowledge to your farm. For more information, check out your County Farm Bureau's Facebook page.
RSVP by July 31st by calling Henry, Mercer, or Rock Island County Farm Bureau.
Farm Week and FarmWeekNow.com journalist Dina Stroish connects rural routes for you. From the Farm Bill to crop insurance to GMO labeling, her expertise is apparent in the stories she reports. Here's a bit about her rural roots.
I get to meet interesting people and share their stories, and I get paid to do it. I cover ag policy and really enjoy keeping the farming community updated on these important issues.
Be it routes or roots, RFD Radio, FarmWeekNow.com, and Farm Week keep you connected.
Let's check the markets on the RFD Radio Network. I'm DeLoss Yankee. Still just a little bit higher to start the week. Corn's up right around a penny. September corn up 1 1/4, 356 1/2. December up 1 3/4, 370 3/4. August soybeans are up 3 1/2, 853 1/4. November up 3 3/4, 868 1/2. September wheat's up 2 1/2 cents at 518 1/2. Soybean meal's back up 3.20 a ton. Soybean oil down 18. Livestock, hogs are up a little bit. August up 35, 66.80. October's up 92, but still just at 52.20. Huge concerns, supply and trade related in the hog market. August cattle are down 1/4 at 108.67. October up 2 at 110.27. DeLoss Yankee, RFD Radio Network. Welcome back to RFD Today on Monday. I'm DeLoss Yankee. Back on Friday, we got to visit Illinois Farm Bureau Vice President Brian Duncan, as well as Purdue ag economist Chris Hurt, talking about the trade concerns and the price concerns, especially with big production in the pork industry.
We've been talking about China, Chris. Let's say China's a long game, and it's going to go from bad to worse. How much could we help things even for this fall if we could get a deal with Mexico or Japan? Would that moderate your outlook some?
Yes, I think so. Again, Mexico is the largest volume buyer of pork in terms of the exports to countries. That's about 7% on volume of our U.S. production. China's around 2%. So you put those together, and that's 9% of our production. Again, Mexico has threatened to put tariffs on grain imports as well, corn, soybean meal, soybean oil, soybeans. But they haven't moved in that direction. So I think Mexico is really sending the signals that they want to negotiate, that they are not just automatically retaliating, and that they really do not want to put tariffs on things like U.S. corn because it's just going to increase the cost for their consumers of their food products. And Mexico is a developing country, and food costs are very important to the consumers of Mexico. And if it's important to the consumers, it's important to those consumers. They are also voters, and in terms of the political issues, food prices are very important. So I think politically, from a Farm Bureau standpoint, your producers and American agriculture knows that Farm Bureau has a seat at the table. They are influential in terms of the policy making, and that the very best solution is to try to settle these trade disputes as quickly as possible. There's multiple reasons for that, but one of them is that the damage is quite real. The magnitudes are quite large in terms of the financial situation for farmers and agribusinesses. And the longer those damages go on, the bigger and bigger and more billions of dollars of damage to U.S. agriculture occurs. Second reason, I think, is very clear as well to everybody, and that is the longer you reorient the trade flows around the world, the more the U.S. loses out as the preferential trade partner. The world, our foreign customers just simply find a way to go around the United States because of the financial incentives they have because of the tariffs on U.S. exports. So that damage, I think, is very clear. It is Mexico putting a quota of 350 million metric tons of pork and allowing other countries to come in duty-free. It is just recently the signing between Japan and the European Union of duty-free exports of food and ag products from the European community to Japan. We have been working with Japan for 40 years to get a movement in that direction, and now Japan moves forward with the EU. Now, maybe the U.S. can negotiate with Japan and also get an opportunity to move more of our food products duty-free into Japan. But the longer those tariffs stay in place against the United States ag, the more the world finds ways to go around us. And that's dangerous. Markets once lost, you can't just snap your fingers and turn those markets back on.
If I could put you in charge of world trade, then how would you prioritize our actions as an organization to tell our government, or just as a government? What would you prioritize for them right now?
Well, I think the lower lying fruit has been mentioned already, and that is getting NAFTA settled with Mexico. This seems to be the preferential direction with the Trump administration. Bilateral negotiations, not multilateral, but with individual countries, that we wave that olive branch with the old and the new administration in Mexico, that we say we're willing to talk, we're willing to negotiate, and we have differences. And, I think it's important for everybody to realize we have always had trade differences with the world. What we've had since 1947, and when GATT was formed, the General Agreement on Trades and Tariff, now called the World Trade Organization, WTO, we settled at that time on a set of trading rules for the international community and an arbiter who would take care of mediation, of making decisions about when you had a conflict, that you'd have a mediator, GATT and now WTO. We made huge progress in those 70 years since to reduce trade barriers, but there are still trade barriers all across the globe. With every country we have disputes. We have certain industries and certain commodities that have favored treatment, and this is true with every country out there. And so to say we should have a level playing field, that's a general concept. It's like in our Constitution saying, in order to form a more perfect union. When do you get to the perfect union? We don't get to a perfect trade map, but we work towards that. So this is a much different approach we've seen from the Trump administration. It's an approach to bring pressure on trading partners to come to the bargaining table and negotiate. But once trade wars start, just like military wars, it's hard to control where they go from there. So dangerous times, work on NAFTA, work on Mexico first, and then bring Canada in. And then I think we just have to talk to the administration about not continuing to escalate. You've threatened. The world understands now that you will do these things. So let's make a strong attempt. If it's going to be bilateral negotiations, then let's get those trade teams out to China, obviously, after we get Mexico and Canada worked through.
Well, usually I say good stuff or, good information, and the information is fantastic. Too bad we have to have these conversations, but we've kept you quite a while, Dr. Hurd. We appreciate it, and if you ever cross the state line, you're always welcome over here in Bloomington.
Well, I read Farm Week faithfully every week, And I particularly like looking at the producers in Illinois that respond on their crop conditions this time of year and keep up with what's happening in Illinois.
It's Chris Hurt, longtime Purdue livestock economist. I forgot this until I hung up with him. He's an Illinois guy. And I can't remember. I want to say Coles County, but he's an Illinois guy. He's originally from Illinois. So, yeah, he would certainly have an interest in what's going on across the state line. Again, at the beginning, he also said if these prices don't improve, it could just be a few months before a significant sow contraction would have to take place. More to come on RFD today. Let's check livestock markets on the RFD radio network. I'm DeLoss Yankee. Illinois direct hog market on the top end was steady late last week. Lost a little bit on the bottom end from $40 to $50 a hundredweight. Sow market steady, 26 to 34 for lightweights. Heavyweights 33 to 38. Heavy boars still at the top of 15. Fairview Sale Barn last week, feeder steers and heifers, 6 weights had a top of 167 for steers. The average was 154.80. 7-weight steers had an average of 138.70, top of 153.5. 6-weight heifers were at an average of 133, had a few topping as high as $142 a hundredweight. They will have the fat cattle sell tomorrow, but no feeders special on Thursday. Everybody will be at the Fulton County Fair instead. DeLoss Yankee, RFD Radio Network.
How do people benefit from raising livestock here in Illinois? Rich Giebert, Illinois farmer, president of the Illinois Farm Bureau.
Well, growing up on a livestock farm was always interesting, and I enjoy it more today than I did back then. But it did give me the opportunity to have a good work ethic, learn to get up in the morning. And you know, that was difficult during my senior days at high school and college days. I had a tendency not to go to bed at a respectable hour. But no, it was always enjoyable on the farm and getting up before daybreak and milking the cows and getting the chores done and then go about the rest of the day's business.
Illinois Farm Bureau, along with beef, corn, milk, pork, and soybean associations, make up the Livestock Development Group, supporting the Illinois livestock sector. For more information, check out illinoislivestock.org.
Welcome back to RFD today on a Monday. Joe Camp, Agrivisor Analyst, is in studio. How's it going?
Good morning. Going well.
So we just talked to Jeff X in a Grain and Feed about a potential early and a potential big harvest. While some people are still asking, gosh, what do I do with my old crop corn? So these decisions could come awfully close to each other of cutting this year's corn and still marketing last year's.
That's right. The crop is coming along awfully quickly across most of the corn belt here. The question, though, is what's the incentive to get it out of the field early? So, you know, we could have a little bit of reluctance to really jump in, certainly at these prices. But I think we're going to have an opportunity, or at least a better opportunity or two, to market our old crop grain before the season's up. But for some, we will advocate that we stretch it out as long as we can. We have some patience here, looking at a nascent recovery here last week, building into this week's markets with some green on the screen for now. So we do have a better outlook for old crop prices even into the end of the season, which, as you note, is rapidly approaching.
I figured Friday would be some sort of correction of, all right, especially for beans 4 days in a row, that's a little too much. But to still be higher even then and today has to be at least a little bit positive.
Right, yeah, exactly. On Friday, you think 5 in a row is awfully hard to do. But Friday's gains came after Thursday's technical success. Yeah. Good performance. When we look at December corn futures, it was dealing with a high at 363 1/4 that we kept mentioning. And it was really crucial that we got over that mark and made it for a close above there. Now we're up towards the 20-day moving average and moving up from there towards key resistance at 374. If we can clear that, I think we've got room to run till 380, where we'll probably likely find some pushback, not only from technical sellers, but from producers as well, wanting to wrap up some of those old crop sales we mentioned. And that would be a good target for us that we have in mind here, that 380 mark there for December corn futures. We'll walk that back into the September bids. But soybeans, same thing, technically strong performance all week early. We were dealing with the pesky 10-day moving average, finally closing above that mark, now working on the 20-day. Not a whole lot of resistance if we can get above the 20-day until we get to 898. And, of course, that'll be really key here for long-term price guidance if we can move above that mark. But, yeah, technical action last week is certainly a positive. Short covering from the fund traders who are carrying for this time of the year about as big a net short position in the grains and oilseeds as we've seen in several years. So a reason to be somewhat optimistic after last week's price performance and this week's follow-through.
So that'll be interesting. How high can we go short-term, knowing that any kind of gain at some point would incite farmer selling that could then put a hose on it?
Yeah, likely somewhat limited, because even though we're seeing the funds cover shorts, we're not necessarily at this point seeing any fresh buying interest. There's just not that motivation when you have the crop coming along as it is, a historically high crop condition rating. Still some uncertainty. Of course, we'll have a lot of debate over the next couple of weeks what to expect out of yield here. Yields for corn and soybeans, get better indication on that for the August crop report. But then again, still some outside market worries, trade fears overhanging, all those things say, yeah, we can continue to cover some shorts, get a little bit less pessimistic about market prospects, but there's nothing to say we're due for an outright bull run here.
You know, they say you can always get it back on the market, sell it for whatever, and you can always get it back later. Is there carry built into early 2019 necessarily? I mean, are there opportunities where you could get some back?
We are looking at a carry structure for this market, being that supplies are abundantly, abundant here in the U.S. and around the world. A little bit less so going forward. There is the outlook for contracting supplies, corn and soybeans, on the global balance sheet, particularly in the hands of the major exporters. So there is some reownership strategies, but we look to stay as best we can towards the front of the curve, maybe take advantage of some option strategies as opposed to being outright futures buyers because of what is still some vulnerability due to trade wars as a big one, and then next just the size of the crop, still unknown for now, but in our minds growing each day in potential.
One of the things I was talking to Mike Doherty about on RFD Illinois was the notion that the trucker strike in Brazil, and who knows what those guys are going to have to pay on freight costs now. The freight costs getting passed to the farmer, and the farmer is holding the beans saying, I don't want to pay those freight costs. So now if you've got you're going to have a supply issue there with farmers not giving up the crop, and yet we still have these low prices over here. So soybeans, there are all kinds of dominoes, it sounds like, being played.
Yeah, key for beans, but also very much for corn at a time when the Brazilian shippers are transitioning their focus, or normally transitioning their focus, towards the corn export program. A smaller crop this year for Brazil's safrinha corn, and also when we throw in the logistical headaches. One, we know China's in the market for every bit of bean handle they can receive out of Brazil. That puts a backlog in what they can do in the corn program. And then when you add the minimum freight rate scheme here, a lot of uncertainty, some hardship on farmers trying to get their crop to the water. We think there's still a lot to be gained as far as shifting trade flows towards the U.S. For all this. And corn, I think it really stands to benefit. We're starting to see that.
For beans, we're done here. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but China was paying $15 3 or 4 years ago. Now with the tariffs, they might pay $12. Surely they could pay $12. What's the problem if they were paying $15 just a few years ago? We'll answer that some other time. That's Joe Camp at Agrivisor. I'm DeLoss Yankee saying watch your ends. We'll do it again in studio tomorrow.
Stay tuned for more on RFD Today, right here on the Illinois Farm Bureau Radio Network.
This is 1,000 Things to Talk About, Daily Download, episode 556. I'm Andrea Parrish. Today's question: are you on LinkedIn? According to the Pew Research Center, in January of 2018, 25% of American adults are on LinkedIn. In 2013, that number was just 17%. Current usage is just a few percentage points away from Snapchat, as well as Twitter, Pinterest, and even WhatsApp. In other words, it's not a widely runaway popular network, but it certainly has a fairly dedicated usage base. That same Pew report held a few other interesting takeaways: that unlike many social networks, there is an equal split between men and women on the network, and 50% of users have a college degree or above. What I find particularly interesting is what Google search suggestions reveal about what people tend to think about LinkedIn. Those search suggestions include things such as, why would I want to use LinkedIn? Is LinkedIn a dating site? How many countries are on LinkedIn? When I'm giving presentations about social media in my professional life as a social media manager, LinkedIn is often the network that I suggest people who quote-unquote hate social media maintain as a way of keeping some kind of online presence with a more professional bent. There is, of course, the constant debate of what network should be versus what users create on and with that network. So I'm curious what you think. Find the discussion under Muse Topics on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And until tomorrow, I'm Andrea Parrish, and this is 1,000 Things to Talk About.